There you go.
We're live. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to the Hierarchy Betrayal podcast. I'm your co-host with Kimberly Maurer, and today we got Ishbel Stracker. We're going to introduce her very quickly. We are streaming from Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Please come to the conversation. Today we're going to talk about fit for practice, especially here in UK. What is happening here in UK? Please enjoy our conversation, participate with your comment, with your thought, and we are very happy to have you here. So, welcome. I am Dina Paoloni. I'm an international educated nurse in UK from Italy. I'm a career coach for international educated nurses, and I am your host today with Kimberly Maurer. Kimberly, how are you?
I'm good, honey. I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Do you want to introduce yourself? And we're gonna we will start the
Oh, sure. Well, good morning, good afternoon to all of you out there. Thank you so much for your time and for and just joining us today. You know, we have these conversations that are not always easy to have, but they're the conversations that need to be had because once they're said out loud, you can't unhear them. So today we are joined by Ishbel Stracker, and she has quite an amazing story to share with us. And I feel that it's one that's perfect for a Sunday morning. So you all know me, and if you don't, I'm Kimberly Maurer. I am the founder of Unapologetically You Collective, nurse coaching and mentoring. I've been in healthcare 36 years. I've been a nurse almost 30 years. And I've seen a lot in my time. And I've seen how this profession is evolving, how it's changing, the hurdles, the struggles, the day-to-day ins and outs that we just need to start talking about a lot more, because I believe that the change that we want to see, honestly, you guys, begins with us. So, Dina, I will let you take it away. Do you want to start with the disclaimer? And then after the disclaimer, we can go ahead and have Ishbel introduce herself.
Sorry, yes. We got this routine to do a disclaimer at the beginning of our podcast because the information shared here are personal thoughts, and we also involve you to comment and to share your thoughts. So everything is shared here is personal. And let's go with the disclaimer.
Disclaimer: the Hierarchy Betrayal podcast. Warning: unfiltered, unscripted, unapologetic. This podcast is brought to you by two nurses who've had enough of the BS. We're talking about the real healthcare system, the one that exploits nurses, commodifies patients, and protects profit over people. What to expect? Zero scripts, just raw, honest conversation. F-bombs, probably more than a few. We're passionate, not polished. Uncomfortable truths. If you're a manager who's complicit in the hierarchy betrayal, this content may cause discomfort, embarrassment, or a sudden urge to defend the indefensible. Not suitable for sensitive managers allergic to accountability, anyone invested in maintaining the status quo, those who prefer their healthcare conversations sanitized and corporate approved. Suitable for nurses tired of being used and abused, healthcare workers ready to call out the mafia, anyone who believes patients deserve better than a system designed for profit. If you're here, you're ready for the truth. Welcome to the Hierarchy Betrayal.
Thank you very much for coming. So Ishbel, thank you very much for coming, for joining us. We have some technical problem, guys, at the very beginning, so it seems we are in a rush. But so Ishbel, please introduce yourself and tell about a little bit of your story. I invite you, after speaking with Kimberly, I invite you for today for this podcast because your story really catch my attention. You have some problem. Well, we still so many having problem with the NMC. We're going to share data in a few minutes with NMC Fit for Practice here in UK. So I'm very excited for the episode. A little bit, excited, nervous, but it's in a positive way because it's very close to my heart. So please introduce yourself and tell us about why I call you for the podcast today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you. Just making sure that you can hear me and everything's okay. Yeah, great. So thanks for having me both, Dina and Kim. It is a genuine privilege to be able to be on here and talk a little bit about kind of my journey and my experiences. And I'll be very brief about the background, but my background is I'm a psychiatric nurse. I have been a psychiatric nurse qualified since 2007, and in my career I specialised in addiction very early on and moved into quite senior positions. I've been a director of nursing and a clinical director 3 times before I opened up my private service. And the final job that I had was in the corporate sense. I was over most of the prisons in the UK. So my job as clinical director was for an organisation that provided treatment to people in prison. And I made a decision to go into private practice around 6 years ago now, because I had had my 3rd child and I didn't want to keep travelling across the country. But also the political climate in healthcare, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I thought that when I went into healthcare, I'd changed my career from doing a law degree. I decided very early on I wanted to be a barrister. And then I made a decision I wanted to go into psychiatry whilst I was doing my law degree, because I was working on a dementia unit. And I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to care for people. And I believed when I stepped into that world that I was going to be able to make a difference. And as you all know, the higher up the ranks you go, the less of a difference on an individual basis you can make, which means to say that you don't get that feeling of satisfaction. There's a misconception that when you're in a senior position, you can make a huge change. And that's what I thought. But actually, what I really missed was that one-to-one patient care, and that's all I wanted. So I set up my private practice, and I had a bit of an issue with it because over in the UK, you know, I was very much around the NHS. I wanted people to have good quality care, and I wanted it to be accessible. And I felt like going into the private sector meant to say that I was alienating a group of people, but I wanted it to be ethical also. So I set that practice up. And I had a vision that I was just going to see patients a few days a week and just really be able to focus on my family. But the business moved very quickly. And the way that I've done business is that I have always thought about what the patient's needs are. When I first started in healthcare, you know, your community services were a one-stop shop where people didn't fall through the gaps. And that started to change a lot. And I didn't like it. So I wanted my service to be very much that. And I did my master's in prescribing early on in 2010. So I was able to provide that care for patients. And the service grew very quickly. And it grew to being a service within 4 years of being in 3 different locations in the UK and having nearly 30 staff. That's where I'm at the moment. But alongside that, in the background, what was going on, I was also, as I'd set up my own business, I was having interactions with other organisations and people that used and weaponised the regulator. And my first interaction with the regulator was that I whistle blew on an organisation that I was working with. I had concerns around their management of safety of what were ambulance staff at the time during a pandemic, and they weren't safeguarding them. And I made a decision clinically to whistleblow. And I knew that that organisation was going to retaliate. They'd warned me, they told me and said, we'll call the police, we'll contact the NMC, we'll do all of these things. But I knew the right thing to do was to whistleblow. That's what I had to do. What I didn't realise was that whistleblowing when you're outside of an organisation is very different, and you don't have the same levels of protection. And I say protection because I now interact with many whistleblowers who actually internally don't have much protection either. But it was a very rocky path that I trod in whistleblowing outside of that organisation. And they reported me to the NMC. They did exactly what they said they were going to do. They also didn't pay their bill, and it cost me a lot. And I thought at the time, it's fine. There's no problem. They've referred me to the NMC. I've got all of the evidence of what's happened. I've done nothing wrong. You know, I take my PIN very, very seriously in client care, and it'll be fine. And the NMC kind of kicked that process into the long grass. At the time, I didn't realise what that meant. I'd worked with the NMC. I'd actually been a medico-legal expert. I'd done some work, and I just thought the regulator do their job and they do uphold justice. But what they did was they kicked it into the long grass. Then what we had was around 2 years following that, a disgruntled patient in my service who was frustrated because they'd had to be discharged because they were aggressive and violent. And they then referred me as a person to the NMC. Again, I thought it's absolutely fine because I can evidence that we've done everything we're supposed to do, referred them back to the GP. I actually hadn't had much interaction with this patient. It was my staff. So it felt like it's not a problem. But then the NMC held on to that one and they did nothing with it. So I've got one from 5 years ago, and then I've got this one. And then 2 years ago, I had a flurry of very difficult staff, one that had to be dismissed for bullying and harassment of a manager, and they retaliated by referring me as an individual to the NMC. And by this point, I've got 3 referrals because the NMC's processes are so slow. And now I realise that when you've got 3 referrals, they take it all very seriously, even though it's nothing to do with me that these referrals are ongoing. And they took me to a hearing, an interim order hearing, and they made a decision to suspend me. And that was 2 years ago in July. I hold my hands up and say right now that none of the accusations were true. They are all vexatious. They can all be evidence that none of it is true. And that's what was so shocking to me at the 2 years ago, because I thought, but you'll see that it's not true. You'll see that it's actually even the evidence that they're producing has nothing to do with what they're saying. But from that point, I went on a very long and very difficult journey of understanding the regulator and the regulators around it. And that led me to a point that I saw the injustices within that. And I got to the point around this time last year where I made a decision that I wasn't going to sit on that. I was going to speak out about it. And I started to speak out about it, and I started to gain some traction. I had a national radio show that came on board and wanted to tell my story that broke the following September. But I also had a law firm who heard my story and said that we're going to support you pro bono to call for a public inquiry. That's what's needed, Ishbel. And that was a big thing. I didn't realise how big it was, because over here, the post office scandal that happened a few years ago actually cost the victims of that a significant amount of legal fees. So it's very, very unique that these lawyers are saying to me, we are going to do this pro bono. At the time, I didn't realize how monumental that was, because I was going through it and I'm in the trauma and I'm like, oh, right, okay, so how do we do this? And the story broke with LBC in September, and there was a national outcry. Not one negative comment came through. But at that point, I started to speak to politicians who were coming on board with me and saying, we're going to call for this public inquiry. And I said, how do I do this? What do I do? No one knew what to do. Every time I went to someone, they'd say to me, I don't know, we've never done a public inquiry before. But a politician told me, you create a media storm, Ishbel, that's what you do. So I started to create a media storm, and I've had lots of media and continue to have a lot of media interaction. But in November, finally, I had a lot of media interaction. A story broke with a local newspaper. I've had The Guardian, the BBC, ITV, lots of different people. There's a documentary about to start to be produced about my story and other people's. But in November, I got a bit tired because people kept saying to me, so what's the answer? What do we do? And I was like, well, we call for a public inquiry and we like flatten the regulator and we rebuild it properly. And they were like, yeah, no, but what do we do about the nurses that are dying? And up until that point, I'd sort of said, well, I can't deal with that because I'm doing this thing. But in November, I started to feel a kind of call on my heart about what to do, and I resisted it for a while, but I started to think I was born for just a time as this was what I was supposed to do. My background is psychiatry. I have a passion for people and injustices, and that's where the Regulatory Justice Foundation was born out of. And I made a decision that it wouldn't just be for nurses, because I was having an outpouring of people from all different backgrounds, solicitors, physios, doctors, whoever it was that had been impacted by the regulator and families. And I made a decision to set up an organisation that supported them with their mental health and provided something for them in crisis, which we're moving towards, but also was able to gather data that was able to inform accurately government and MPs as to what they needed to do. And that's where we're at now.
And thank you very much for sharing your story. It's an incredible story. I read your article on Nursing Standard. Let's break down things. Let's bring some data, please. So, because what shocked me the most was that in 10 years, nurses, NMC Fit for Practice led to 33 nurses who died for suicide. So 3.3 nurses per year, because they didn't, the Fit for Practice was not able to handle the situation in a fair, human way. So this podcast, which is Hierarchy Betrayal, is an international podcast. We have audience from all around the world, and we start to have a good traction. So for those who live internationally, who don't know about the UK or the NMC, and will let you explain a little bit about the data, what is happening, how the process is. Because what we talk about in this podcast is especially, and Kimberly, please come forward after this. This is about support nurses, because we recognize that nurses have been silenced from multiple ways, and we're not just exploited, we're not just exhausted, we're not just burned out, but we're also silenced. So if we want to make sure that nursing is on top of a cliff, so we have to do something to make nurses fly, otherwise nursing will drop in the cliff and humanity won't receive the care they needed. They actually will be increased so much the next year. So, Kimberly, please enter the conversation if you have something else to do. But I would like that Ishbel will explain to an international audience what is NMC Fit for Practice process. Thank you.
Yeah, so the NMC Fit for Practice is a process that a nurse goes to over here in the UK, that if there has been a concern raised, whether it is evidenced or not, and that's the nuance of it, it's not a criminal process. Yeah. It's not even really a civil process. The balance isn't the same. And if an issue is raised to the NMC, they will make a decision whether you are fit to practice. But the problem is that it's before trial. So it's almost like being bailed in prison without any evidence or concern before you've even had a trial. And the other problem is the reason that there's the 33 that we know of, and I have to say that we know of, because exactly. I speak to people, multiple people every day who have attempted to take their own lives. The stories that I am hearing are so horrific that I won't let anybody read my emails, because what I'm listening to is, you know, and I'm a psychiatric nurse, my specialism is trauma. It's traumatic. But the problem is the time. So if you had a trial in a criminal sense that took 12 months, we're going to want 12 months, aren't we? Because we know then that it's been looked at, the evidence has been looked at properly, and then you come out the other side. The problem is these processes are taking 6 to 7 to 8 years. So you are on bail in prison with your hands tied here, unable to work because people will not employ you, and you are living with the shame of a process that you can't even really explain. And that's the fitness to practice process over here.
And I would like to just make a metaphor, an example. It's like during the Inquisition when there was the aunt of the witches. So it was enough to say that a woman was a witch, that the Inquisition would have that woman kill that woman. So basically, you just need that someone say that you are not good as a nurse, that you have done something, and they just start this procedure that is not necessarily, you know, bring you in court and do the process and see actually the evidence if you're guilty or not, right? So they just stop you from work, so you don't have the possibility to work because you are just under fit of practice, not because you're guilty, not because you've done something, but because you're under the procedure itself.
And some people do have conditions of practice. There are some that do, but there are others that don't have that. And you know, there is no recompense. I am unable to practice as a nurse. I've not been able to practice as a nurse for 2 years. And there is no evidence other than hearsay or statements that would uphold that. And I know at the end of all of this that there will be no case to answer, but it will be 6 years down the line. And that's the difficulty.
Yeah, you don't have a salary. You can do anything. Kimberly, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't. It's awful. It's absolutely awful what you've been through, and you're not the first person I've spoken to about whistleblowing and the retaliation, the ramifications, the loss. I mean, you've lost your identity, you've lost who you are and how you proceed, you know, in this world. And I highly recommend. I commend you for speaking up, because we do have to do the right things. We do. We're on the front lines. We are in the trenches. We are saying the things that are wrong, that need to be justified and that need to be brought to light, not only for our safety, but for patient safety. And I'm so sorry that it's taking so long. Is there any way, because again, being in the US, I'm not really familiar with this whole process for you guys, but is there any way to speed that up? Is there anyone, I mean, that's outside of that system that you can go to? I mean, anybody can go to. I mean, I could see anyone having to put their life on hold and try and reinvent themselves to do something else, to become something else until that process is completed. Is there anything, is there any one organization, is there anyone watching today that has ideas to kind of fast forward that process? That's just such a long time.
Well,
so
I mean, the difficulty is, Kim, that the process is based on the crumbling of the NMC. So what you've got is an organisation that isn't fit for purpose, and it's because, you know, nurses. I think there's over 800,000 nurses in the UK. The NMC is not able to manage those processes. The world has changed. So if you think about, I don't know, when I first qualified, I didn't know people that had been referred to the NMC. You weren't referred to the NMC. People didn't do it vexatiously because you were getting on with your job. And I'm guessing the climate for wanting to complain and highlight or kind of retaliate wasn't there at that point. So you've got an organisation that is archaic and hasn't moved efficiently with the times. And then you've also got a code of practice that is so broad, anybody could fall into it. So the problem you have is the NMC appear to, once they have hold of you, they will find anything to evidence that that is true. And they will use lots of different ways of doing that. I've heard nurses' stories of people being accused of all sorts and then digging into their background and just making things fit. And you've got an organisation that actually also is malicious at times. Now, you asked before, is there a way of speeding it up? I think if anybody was likely to have speeded it up, it's probably me, because I'm in the media talking about them all the time and they want me to go away probably and be quiet. I even had a conversation back and forth on LinkedIn openly with the chief exec of the NMC, and I asked him for a meeting. And my process is still sort of 6 years in the running. The way to get it speeded up potentially is through your MP, but they don't really have that much power. They write to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State is aware of the issues with the NMC.
And I always also would like to say, I would like to talk about different things today, actually. So I'm a career coach for international educated nurses. Unfortunately, I hear all the time the racist that is in the NHS, in the NMC. We got a scandal 2 years ago. Inside the NMC, there is a racism, and how they handle racism inquiry. And so, but being a career coach, speaking with, especially with young international educated nurses that are often by themselves in UK working as consultant, that, for example, they are laid off without a very good reason. And when they talk about how they appeal have been done, it's clear that the group of people who was there to listen to the appeal were all white, when actually the nurses made the appeal is black, or have a black person for the unit that accompany them to do the appeal. So I see this over and over again. I'm so angry about this thing. And I know that we have this scandal in the NMC, which is raised the scandal for this racism. So one thing after the other is very concerning, because also the way nurses are treated. In UK, we have 1/3 of registered nurses who are international educated nurses. As I'm international educated nurse myself and career coach for international educated nurse, I really feel the need to advocate for international educated nurses. And the fact that the NMC doesn't really support international educated nurses, right? This is concerning, and I'm very, very scared about this. So if I can do anything, everything in my power to raise the concern, to raise nurses' voice, I do it. This is why, thank you very much for accepting my invitation for today. I read in your article that in the nursing standard article that talk about you, that we have roughly 600 referral per month to the NMC Fit for Practice. And this is very high number. Like, NHS, but generally all practice in UK, and we know globally, we have a nursing crisis. Nurses are devastated, are burnout, are exhausted. They really work outside of their capacity, right? So we do our best to care to patients in using a high quality of care, patient-centered care, and we do our best, but we don't have the resources, so we always understaffed. It's like the system punishes us to do a job, even though we do the extra mile on top of the extra mile on top of the extra mile. So it's normal that we are human, make mistakes, right? So even the little mistake we made, why someone have to report to the NNC because we've done a mistake that could be prevented by do something about retention. And from here, actually, in mind, I have, do you know the case of Radonda vote in USA? And Kimberly, please tell me more if you know more about it. She's in USA. She's been accused of homicide because she dispensed a medication, rocuronium instead of, I don't know if midazolam or propofol. Anyway, she dispensed one medication to another and the patient died. But this happened because she was under stress in an understaffing place in a critical situation. So she paid the consequences of someone else's mistake. And I feel that globally this happened over and over again. And I know this one topic leading to another topic, but if we don't support nurses, if we don't advocate for nurses, we keep penalizing nurses. I don't know where we're going to end up.
Well, where we're going to end up is in a it's an unsafe space, isn't it? Because I was always taught as a nurse that your reflective practice is important. You highlight a mistake. There's no fear. I don't want to go into a hospital where a nurse accidentally gives me a medication and feels too frightened to speak up and say, I've accidentally given that medication. Like you say, we're human, and massively traumatized a lot of the time with the work that we're doing. We've just come through a pandemic. And hugely understaffed, propping up a healthcare system. People make mistakes. I think that, the 600 referrals are reflective of potentially people just lashing out, but it's the consequence of those referrals, isn't it? If you write on TripAdvisor that you didn't like the food that you ate in a restaurant, your aim isn't to get the restaurant shut down. But that's what's happening with the NMC. I don't believe that everybody that refers to the NMC's intention is, I want to get that nurse sacked or struck off. But unfortunately, that's the NMC's intention. So it's out of your hands. You're throwing a grenade into somebody's life when you do it. The frightening thing now is that the public can see what happens when you do that. So those that are doing it vexatiously, there's an intention to throw that grenade in, and the NMC need to get better at sifting out what are the grenades.
So, so in hearing you say that, Ishbel, it reminds me of like if you see a crime. I mean, we're told all the time, if you see something, say something, but it's not really that easy. It's not that safe, and it reminds me of when you see something happen, say, and you have to talk to the police. Well, the police have talked to, say, 20 other people, and everybody has a totally different story. Nobody's witnessed the same exact thing, right? And you talk about most of these referrals, most likely, I mean, if not evidence-based, are someone lashing out at someone else. Rather than having a simple adult conversation and just talking to that person, it's easier to secretly hide it and put it on someone else's hands, put it in their lap and not even think about it anymore. You did your job, you reported.
And the thing is, we know that we live in this world because we have keyboard warriors on social media that are called trolls. It's a form of trolling, isn't it? But the problem is it's costing people's lives, and we're never going to stop the trolls because there is a certain type of personality that does this. But that's why the regulators need to get better at sifting it out. The police manage it. And my answer is that they have a process that if you are found to falsely refer somebody, there is a consequence. And if the NMC don't want to uphold that consequence, they need to untie the nurses or the clinicians' hands to be able to move forward with that. Because I wouldn't report a crime falsely, not just because I'm an honest person and I wouldn't do that, but also I'd be worried about what the police might do.
Nobody would.
Because because also, you can have a prosecution against you for falsely giving information. Why on earth is that not the case?
Right. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ann Johnson. She's in the UK as well. And she posted some videos recently, whistleblowing and, calling some things out. But now, she's living in fear, and it's been years now, living in fear of the retaliation of everything. And how do you get yourself back again? And that's the thing I'm seeing is when people have lost so much of who they are and their identity, I see where the bodies are piling up. The bodies are just going to keep piling until we make safe places for people. When we allow it to be okay to speak up. And like you said, you have it all evidence-based. You have the evidence from all of your accusations and the things that you're fighting. And I applaud you. I can't even tell you how much I applaud you for speaking up, for going to the media, for trying to make things right, because it's people like you that are brave and courageous. And this wasn't about trying to get some sort of pat on the back for yourself. This wasn't about getting kudos. This was about you doing the right thing. And I think there are so many people out there that want to do the right thing. But again, we are so handcuffed that, you don't want to lose your job. You have a family to support. The rent's due. There's just so many things I think that go through your head when you're deciding whether or not, God, do I do this? Do I say anything? And I think truly that there are probably so many things that are happening that have happened and nobody has said anything because they're so afraid. And I have found that, especially in the last 5-10 years, and especially after COVID, everybody is so afraid of failing. Everyone is so afraid of losing their job because I don't know about there, but here in the US, you can apply and apply and apply and apply. It is so hard to find a job here. And it's becoming more about who you know, not just, getting on and applying to certain jobs and whatnot. But I think it's like, how do you find your footing again? How do you take that first step to feeling safe enough to re-enter the profession after you have this darkness, this shadow that's kind of per se following you after you've done something like this? And in your heart of hearts, deep in your soul that you did the right thing. And Dina and I have these conversations all the time. It's so infuriating that you did it because it's the right thing to do. But now you're chastised. Now you're looked upon differently. Now you have this, I don't know, this dark cloud, I guess, that follows you. And is it going to come up in conversation? Good morning, Anne. Good morning, Stephanie. It keeps coming up and it follows you. And then when someone says something, or you have, say, that person who likes to gossip and to talk smack, now if you finally found your footing again, you're now in a new organization and you're thinking, that's behind me. I did the right thing. I'm proud of what I did and I'm moving on. I'm moving forward. But then when you have cultures like that, you have people that do like to gossip and people that try to make friends. I say secrets don't make friends, but they're doing that in the background. And I think, and this is just my opinion, I think when you're beat down so much, when you've finally seen the light again, when you finally come out of that darkness, you finally found your way, that's why so many are going and dying by suicide. They don't feel that they have the support. They don't feel that there's anybody that truly believes in them. I mean, why can't someone believe me? I did what was right. I did what my oath said as a healthcare professional, as a nurse, as a physician, I stood up, and now look at me. And I think that that's why so many people don't do the right thing. I think people just, they don't want to get involved. They don't want to deal with the repercussions and what that follows them. And this is just, analogy metaphorically, it's like a rape victim. When a rape victim says, I've been raped, and they hold that for so long, and then they finally get the courage to talk up about it. They finally get the courage to speak and to go to someone. And like you said, go to the organization and you tell them your concerns and nothing happens. Or then it becomes a blame game. Then this whole, it's no longer that you're the victim of that. It's now that we're going to punish you for that. And you see
I think it's also such a shock, isn't it, though? I mean, if you've never encountered an institution that shuts down on you and does this, and everyone that I'm speaking to, and I'm sure the people that you speak to, it's their first engagement of coming across an organization that just goes, no, we're actually going to retaliate because you've done the right thing. It's too late then, because you go, oh, right, I thought I was supposed to do this. We're raised thinking that we're supposed to do that. So it's a shock for people. I think also the reason that people don't want to speak up, I remember very early on after it went live with LBC in September, I had so many people contact me and say how brave I was. And I was like, brave? Why should I be worried? Are we not all supposed to just be doing this? But actually, people are psychologically crushed. You're kind of just thinking about the here and now. And, that's ebbed and flowed for me, where there's been moments where it's like, I need to just focus on my own circle, what's going on for me right now. And then I've got the strength to carry on for some other people, and it ebbs and flows. But I think you've also got the other bit, which is that sometimes people do things that are wrong. It doesn't mean to say that you should be crucified, though. That's the thing. Like, we are fallible. And, Dina, you said it at the beginning. It's really important to say that it's safe to be able to say, I did do that incorrectly. Now, this is how I'm going to rectify it. This is what I need to put in place to do that. What we're building is a system where it's unsafe. I don't know whether it works the same for you guys, but over here also, what the NMC really love to do is when there's no case to answer, at the bottom of the letter, it says, however, if something comes our way in the next 3 years, we will relook at this. We will potentially reopen this case. So even if you've gone through a 6 or 7 year process and there's no case to answer, what you live in fear of is, what if somebody vexatiously refers me again? I've got to go through the whole thing. They'll just join it all together. And can you imagine that in a criminal situation? You go through a criminal trial, you're found not guilty. You wouldn't go out thinking, oh, but if I have a road traffic accident, they're going to unearth that murder case. You just live your life. That's the thing that hangs over as well.
Yeah, it was scaring me the most is that the name are public. So if you go to the NMC, you can see the people are under fit for practice. Names where they were working when that be fit for practice. This is so unfair. So the regulatory body that's supposed to regulate and so protect as well, because you want to protect the population, but you don't protect the population if you actually persecute the people who care for the population. And you put on display nearly 600 nurses every month, and you keep there as long as you think is right. And from the Professional Standard Authority, I was reading from the article again, that the NMC Fit for Practice meet only 11 of 18 standards. Right? So you are not fit for practice, and you all me not fit for practice for as long as you think is right, without telling me that I'm guilty or no. You just keep me there because someone reported to you my name, even though if I have done anything wrong. But the problem is that this display build up the fear, right? So people, if they do any mistakes, again, if you, as a nurse, you give a medication that is wrong, okay, and you're scared to tell to other, you cannot make any remedy to that, to that mistake. I mean, if I do medication, if I give a medication instead of another medication, right? And I feel safe to speak up because I know that my team will support me, the doctor will come and help, the hospital will come to support me to if I feel safe, I can speak up. Someone else can help me, you know, bridge the gap. You know, we can give another medication and make sure the patient now is safe. If I'm scared to speak up, I won't say my mistakes, and then the patient will pay the consequence.
Exactly. It's an unsafe space to work in when you don't feel safe.
Yeah. So it displaying all those people who hasn't been convicted yet, they just be reported, right? Keep them in that list is, from my point of view, I think it's going to increase the fear even more. It's not beneficial. It's just, I don't understand why they keep displaying publicly. They could have the list privately, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also make the system a little bit more quickly. And yeah, I think it is human. But you say in your article, and I don't know, the lady you speak in the video as well, I think it's all your lawyer, the lawyer that helping you. And so do you want to talk about this organization that you found to help nurses who actually going through?
Yeah, the Justice Foundation.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so it's set up for all professionals that are regulated. It's not just nurses, as I say. I saw an influx of varying professionals, and I didn't want to leave people behind. Regulators are failing left, right, and centre. However, the NMC, without a doubt, are the worst. But it was set up to provide support. So at the moment, we have a peer-to-peer support group every other Wednesday. And that's every Wednesday, 8 o'clock UK time, that people can come on and just talk about what the week or the last couple of weeks has held for them and how they're feeling. Sometimes it's the only space that they are talking in. You know, we talked about shame. There's people I speak to that haven't even told their families that they're going through this because they feel such a sense of shame. And, you know, it's a risky and lonely space. One of the things that my business does is provide trauma support for blue light services, and that is police, fire and ambulance in the UK. We are very concerned when someone hasn't told somebody that they are feeling low or actively suicidal. So when I have professionals come on that group and say, you're the only people that know, that's a worry, you know. And I talk about coming out of the shadows because there is no shame, and you can say, actually, this is what's going on for me. By the end of the year, I want to be able to provide trauma-informed therapeutic support in the form of either CBT or DBT for people that are going through these processes. And I'm applying for funding because nurses and other professionals are left without a career. They're eating out of food banks. They're not paying their mortgages. It's adding to the weight and the burden on their shoulders, what's going on. So a provision like this is important. And then by the end of the year, I want to have a crisis line set up where people can call if they feel in crisis and are actively suicidal, to be able to get that immediate support. Because if we lose another nurse, you know, it will be an absolute travesty. The losses that have happened over the years, and I would be devastated if we found that somebody had taken their own life. But the problem is, Dina and Kim, I hear people every day that I think they could be the next person.
Yeah, so I put the UK number for if you feel that you are in the very dark moment and you feel that you are about to or you are planning to end your life, please call one of this number, because they are people on the other side of the phone. They are doing this. They are there to support you, to speak with you, helping you, and helping you save yourself. Or if you think this planning of this action is imminent, please go to the closer A&E and they can help you. I just wanted to share this light. Do you know, and Kimberly, please tell me if you feel the same. So Ishbel, I'm telling you, every time we do our episode, every episode we have over 100 comment, interaction, share things, and I check even on LinkedIn to see if it was the streaming platform that gave me problem today, but people are not interacting. I can see there are people watching, but they are not interacting. And these scare me, because this means that people are so afraid to enter to this conversation. And I want to be honest with you today. I felt a little bit, I really wanted to, because I contacted you. I speak with Kimberly. I thought that there's this going on in UK. Should we give a voice? We will talk about this. So it was my input, because I really want to talk about this. But I'm honest. Before starting, yes, I have some technical issue, but I felt a little bit anxious about these things, because I am a registered nurse. I'm still working in clinical, right? So, but the fact that we don't have many comments, actually, nearly nothing, is so much concern, because this podcast has over 100, between 100 to 150 comments every time, isn't it, Kimberly?
Can I ask a question, Dina? What were you frightened of?
Yes, please.
Yeah, what were you frightened of when you said, you were a bit anxious about this conversation? Does it feel kind of worrying that, exposing? What does it feel like?
No, not anxious, maybe express myself anyway. But a little bit, is talking about your nursing board regulator, right? So you are exposing something that is big, and I put my face in this. And I'm international educated nurse. I am still practicing very part-time, because I'm a career coach for international nursing. But I am exposing myself to this conversation, because I know that this is a hard conversation to have. So I'm not anxious, but I feel a bit, we have to take courage to do this, but we must do this. So I'm not anxious, because otherwise I was not doing. My dry mouth is simply related to medication. People follow me. They know that I set on time or always have this dry mouth. So, but I feel I can see the problem. I can see the shame. And 3.3 nurses who end their life every year because fit for practice process too long or too unfair. This is hard. This is a very terrible things. So the border regulator that must regulate in a fair way to protect the public and to protect also the professional. If the first who is not fit to practice, and is the same agency that go against their own professional. And I was reading as well from the same article that doctors, for example, they own, let me see if I can find it. So the General Medical Council, so the regulator of doctor, medical professional, has several safeguarding policy to identify vexatious complaint. So why we never learn from doctors? This is, they think that we are really against each other as nurses. Is come out in this podcast over and over again. And I always say, I don't understand why doctor, they protect themselves. right? They may don't like each other, then they resolve their problem in closed doors, while nurses, they always publicly, bite and fight each other. So, and this is another confirmation of what we always say in this podcast. So the General Medical Council, which is the board regulator of doctors in UK, has these several policy to identify exertion complaints. So I don't know the number, but I don't think they receive 600 referral each month.
Well,
I don't know the number because I didn't search, but the fact that they have policy to protect whistleblowers and to make sure that the referrals are not vexatious, this is say a lot, right? We should learn from that. So why display 600 nurses every single month say, this has been referred, so probably has done something wrong, before even actually realize that accusation is right or wrong, right? Why don't we learn from there? And
yeah, there's definitely a need for a vexatious referral policy. Is one of the conversations that I have frequently. And it takes resource to be able to look at that and to be able to support people around those vexatious referral policies. I have a number of nurses who I speak to who have they have been in domestic violence relationships, and the perpetrators of that domestic violence relationships have used weaponized the NMC, and they have been suspended because of it, pending investigation. I've had some nurses who had to deal with the NMC legally because they kept publishing, as you've talked about, where they worked and the area that they were in during the fitness to practice, and the police had to get in touch with the NMC and say, stop doing it, you're putting this victim at risk, because it was the perpetrator, in order to find out where this person lived. It's an unsafe process, but they're an unregulated regulator, and this is why there needs to be a public inquiry. I think that, it's interesting you say that people are quiet. It's an uncomfortable conversation, isn't it? I mean, that's obviously what you guys do. You have these uncomfortable conversations. And, we all want to live in a world where it's like, I'm all right, Jack. It's not going to affect me. I'll be okay. The problem is we have to have these conversations because nobody's safe. That's the point. Nobody is safe. And, reason doesn't actually equate to it moving through in a normal way. I've been I've been a director of nursing 3 times. I've got my own business. I uphold safe practice. I'm a medico legal expert. I had a book coming out. I was a TV mental health personality. Why would I skip something to have the NMC involved and sabotage my own career? It doesn't make any sense. But nobody's safe in these processes, because once the regulator makes a decision, it moves forward with that. And I say that because I'm in a much better position than many other people, and I'm very clear about that. I am and that's partly why I do speak out about it, because I'm prepared to die on this hill. I really, really am, for everybody else that comes behind me, because I won't rest until there is a public inquiry, and I won't go back to nursing until there is a public inquiry.
Kimberly, do you want to say something? I know that being in another country is not very easy because you have your own Florida body regulator, but you can testimony that this podcast never be so quiet.
No, honestly, it's never been so quiet. And I seen that. Did you see Cutie's comment that was put up?
Oh, yes.
I think we should touch on that. So Cutie says, thank you for sharing. Very important message. I am very senior nurse working at director level and keen to help up. I am a certified coach, and I have also huge interest in trauma work. And, you know, I think, thank you for your presence and your voice, first off. But I think it's sometimes these tough conversations that people just watch. They just listen. They're just looking for support. They're just looking for a safe place, you know, to feel less alone, and kind of going through their own struggle and their own debating of, do I say something? Do I stay quiet? You know, and when you're watching these conversations, like we always have tough conversations, and I'm honestly so happy and glad that we do, Dina, because it's these conversations that are going to bring change. It's these conversations that are going to push things forward, and hopefully, Lord willing, stop the bodies from piling up, to stop that from happening, and to keep having these conversations that others feel safe enough to speak up in. Because it's the stories, you guys, that all of us are telling, all of us that are sharing. And we've all had some experience where we've been through it, or we've seen someone go through it. We do. We know somebody who knows somebody who tells a story.
Or someone that's close to it. I've had
Mhm.
people stopping me in the supermarket and say, I've heard your story, Ishbel, and, you know, I'm an ITU nurse, and I fear, because we are under-resourced, and I know that, like, if I do one thing wrong, something could happen to me, but I don't know what to do. You know, everyone feels on the cusp of, is it safe, and what will happen if something happens? So, yeah.
Yeah. And Patricia, good morning, Patricia, says, how does one get a public inquiry to actually happen? Good question. Go ahead, Ishbel. I'll let you answer that. Yeah,
Well, I'll give you my learning on the job response, which is creating media presence. So I'm constantly having conversations with the media, you know, every week, having different conversations of what the angle is, because politicians are interested in the media. It's about gathering data, so being good at utilizing the voices. You know, my story is interesting, but it's not the only story. There's hundreds and hundreds of patterns that create data sets that move things along. And then it's also about bringing on MPs. I've now got 8 MPs that are on board, but it's like herding cats, because, you know, members of parliament are amazing, but they are for their own agenda. So I'm having to be very, very calculated's the wrong word, but making sure that it's in the public domain. You know, my conversations, my passion is nurses. My passion is that professional people are losing their lives. It's just not okay. My passion is the fact that we work really, really hard to uphold a healthcare system. My passion is the fact that there's not one person in this world that can't say a nurse has put their hands on them, whether it's at birth or it's at death. It's a privileged position that we are in, and everybody has interacted with a nurse at some point in their life, and we are not respected. But the media are interested in the fact that if you walk into a hospital, you are not safe. That's what moves the MPs. So I'm creating a narrative all the time and going to Parliament and speaking about this that is palatable for them and for their agenda. And then I am calling for papers to be put forward, so it is on the lips of MPs at all times. I'm going to Northern Ireland tomorrow to speak in Parliament in the UK frequently about the issues. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm doing, and it seems to be doing something.
Yes, what we're doing as well, because, excuse me, this is one of the many problems that are facing nurses now. So we try to raise the nurses' voice and to talk about the many problems that nurses are facing at the moment. And the more we talk, the more we think that we're going to give courage to nurses to speak up, courage to nurses to feel they are not alone, they not live alone that situation, but that this situation is common. and to start to speak up, advocate for themselves. Because unfortunately, nurses are numbed, emotionally numbed at the moment. And we see this over and over again because all the odds that we have against us. So we think the same, that the more we're talking about, and again, every episode we have between 100 to 150 comments. And because the problem we talk about are very common. And I'm shocked that today we don't have that many. And I can see there are people there watching. So I think that, Kimberly, I don't know, but tell me, I think this one is maybe the most threatening we have never talking about, probably because a board of regulator, nursing board regulator is involved in a way or another.
No, I agree. I agree. And that's okay. I would rather you be present and watching and getting something and taking something away from this conversation that we're having today, because Ishbel, what you've shared and how you've explained it and articulated it so well, for even my understanding, not being there and not understanding the whole process. I'm just kind of sitting here. You see, I haven't hardly said 2 words today. I mean, I'm just taken by this conversation and thinking, wow, how does this happen? Why is this happening? Why is this continuing to happen? Why isn't there a better system for kind of weeding out what is real and what's a facade? Why are we having this drag out for years and years, where I think that time of not having any stability or having anything sustainable, in your life as your career, and losing your identity and trying to find your way back from that darkness and that shadow, it blows my mind that the process is so slow. And then also people that are afraid of speaking up, they're seeing something happen, something has happened to them, and they're just afraid. And I think that just kind of keeps circling and circling. And there's that, how do I say something? What if I do? You know what I mean? I think, and just listening to you and Dina, from what your knowledge is based on there, that I think that is what holds so many people back, is I saw what happened to so-and-so. I can't afford to say anything. I can't lose my job. I can't do it. I can't. But it's not that you feel like what they said was wrong, or that it was wrong to say something. It was right, obviously. But you look at your own circumstances and you're like, wow, I can't. I'm too afraid to lose everything. I have a family to support. I have a career. And saying something, it puts me in the spotlight. Like Dina was saying, you're exposing yourself. You're now, and I say that as well, that find your tribe, find your people, find your support, because all of us need support. We all need someone to talk to lay it down. And Ishbel, I don't know if you've watched many of our episodes and my other podcasts that I do with Mark Carter and the Nurse Collective. We're always carrying this suitcase full of trauma. We carry it with us everywhere. You fill it up, you put it in the closet, you grab another one, it's at the door when you leave. You bring all of that trauma back home with you every single day. We just don't have a lot of safe places that I'm seeing, honestly, to lay that trauma down, to lay down everything that you're carrying safely, and to talk about it. So I highly recommend and commend peer-to-peer support. Find your tribe, find your people, and have those tough conversations. If it doesn't go anywhere but that conversation or that safe place, at least you have talked about it. At least you're not carrying it alone any longer. And I believe that the podcast that Dina and I have had in the past, I mean, this is episode 13, season 3. And like she said, there's comments and people are interacting. The conversation is always ongoing. So now today, with seeing the watchers and the people that are listening, I just feel that there has to be something that they're carrying as well, that they're just They're just wanting to be in a safe place, in a room, to feel that they're not alone, you know, to say, I've seen that, I've been through that, and thank you. I think that people are just saying thank you. Thank you for saying it out loud.
And I think, like you just said then, Kim, it's not about, it doesn't have to do anything with it, do you? The story. There's no, it's about talking. I think one of the things that this was a world that I discovered 2 years ago. I didn't know this existed. Because I wasn't looking. I think people have been talking about it, but I wasn't looking because I was in my own lane and I wasn't looking at that. But I think what I want to say is that part of what I want to do is create spaces where people are able to talk about it without there needing to be an agenda. It doesn't have to be used, but a collective voice is far more powerful. And a collective voice is far more powerful for you as an individual as well, because you realize, like you've said, that you're not alone. You're not the only person that is the defect nurse that's got something wrong or that the regulator is going towards. It's happening. It's a pandemic in itself that is happening, and creating a space where people can hear about it is important. You know, there is an element of shame, isn't there? You know, I talk about it. Every time I talk about it to the media, I wait for them to ask, like, I expect them to not believe me. And I know that I do internally, that every time I tell my story, there's a bit of me that's like, do you believe me? Do you not believe me? That's sort of dissipated a little bit, because in a way I don't really care. I know my own truth. But if I feel like that 2 years on, having spoken about it openly to so many people, how much more do other people feel like that? And, you know, people do think, they must think there's no smoke without fire. And it holds people back.
Exactly. And this is why I wanted to ask you, how can people contact you if they are in their situation, or if they have someone they know that is in this situation, or they're scared to say something because they may end up in this situation? How can they contact you, and how can they join your organization? Or even if any founder or people that want to support your cause, how can reach into you and actually participate in your mission?
Yeah, drop me an email, get in touch with me on LinkedIn, go onto my social media, go onto the Justice Foundation website, drop me an email. I get emails all day, every day from people either telling me their stories or wanting to join. And, you know, you're welcome. Please do. Even if it's just to say hi, please do, and get in touch.
And I'm going to put your email and your website in the comment below, so people, or in the description. If you're watching from YouTube, please check out the description. So we got a few messages, if you don't mind, few comments, if you don't mind. Are you still hear me? Because I have some notification and my network is not working. Okay, Kimberly, she will bring up some comment.
Yeah, let's start with Patricia. What Patricia said.
Thank you.
Yeah. She said, are any of the MPs actually interested in the NMC issue and prepared to speak to it in Parliament yet? What about the RCN and the other unions? Thank you, Patricia.
So as I say, I've got four MPs officially on board who are speaking about it in Parliament, and speaking about it at every opportunity they can. And I have MPs contacting me every day now. In the past 2 weeks, I've had MPs contacting me every day, and I've got meetings with them. I had one MP get in touch with me only the other day and say that they want to join and support, and that they have a specific interest in the NMC. They're fully aware of it and they want to talk about it. So it's gathering momentum. In relation to the RCN, I'll be blunt, the RCN are in bed with the NMC. So I wouldn't have anything to do with the RCN. I am a member of the RCN, but I don't know how, you know, in the business world, there's an ethical line, isn't there, between an organisation that feeds another organisation, and the RCN are supported and structured by nurses who are regulated by the NMC. My mind is blown how you can have an impartiality with that. So I'm really happy when I hear positive things about the RCN from people. I'm very happy when they say the RCN have been good to me. However, the majority of people I speak to would say that the RCN are not particularly good. And other unions, I haven't spoken to other unions.
If I can confirm, because again, I'm a career coach for international nurses. Every time they have problem because someone lead them off without any reason, or they have this kind of problem, and in the past I have problem with my salary as well. So I reach out to them, and I'm a member RCN. Unfortunately, they didn't help me, but all these people that I speak with, they say that the RCN didn't really give them a help. Always excuse in a way or others. They come to protect themselves, and they really are. It seems they are against or perpetuating trauma, exposure, and harassment to the nurses, so who are the people they're supposed to actually protect. So I can confirm because I've got many experience. So. We got Barry. Ben.
Okay, so Ben, good morning. Hello, Nurse Kimberly Maurer, Dina Paoloni, and Nurse Ishbel Stracker. Hello. This is a truly meaningful conversation, and I would genuinely love to engage more actively. Unfortunately, my network is a bit unstable at the moment, but I'll be following along as best as I can and contributing gradually as things improve. Thank you for all that you do and for consistently being a strong voice in this space. Nurse Patricia Temple, I see you there in the comment section. Thank you, you too, for being a mother. Elder nurse, I just love Patricia, and she brings always so much insight to these conversations. And Ben, it would not be a podcast without technical difficulties. I'm just going to say that again out loud because it happens all the time. As you've seen, Dina, she just did a superhuman act and was gone, and then she was back. It's okay.
Yeah, Justice, I'm sorry. I was saying, oh my God, I just interrupted the podcast now. I didn't want to.
No, it's perfectly fine. You know, like I said, it happens. It's okay. And then Cutie says, couldn't agree more with this discussion. Nurses are often the last to take care of themselves. Day after day, they absorb patients' pain, grief, and fear. Vicarious trauma is real, and it accumulates silently. The culture says push through. Their identity says, I'm the caregiver. So asking for help feels almost impossible. I totally agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. I mean, not often do we ask for help. Not often do we raise our hand and say, hey, I'm struggling. Someone please help. You don't feel, and it's so sad. You don't feel that the support is out there, or you don't have, because trust is so hard to get anymore. It's so hard to build relationships with people anymore because, like you said before, Ishbel, people always feel like there's an agenda. There's something behind it. And trusting to have those tough conversations with people without getting judged, without being shamed, without it not staying in that conversation. You know, are they going to say something? You know, is something going to happen down the line and that's going to come out? You know, where I trusted you with what I had to say and what I was carrying, and you know, disregarded that conversation as a trust between two people. And then you feel lost because you're like, God, and now, when it goes from one person to one person, you know how gossip is. It's never the story that originated. It's a he said, she said, he said, hearsay. And I think all of that just kind of, that turmoil builds as well. And then Patricia says, it's the age old who is guarding the, who is guarding the guards issue, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've got the last question. I'm happy that people are engaging now.
Yeah.
Maybe
So does Ishbel have any advice for nurses once they are referred to the NMC? Well, that's a great question, Elsie. Thank you for asking. Ishbel, go ahead, honey.
So what I would say is find your alternative path. And I don't mean that from a career perspective, because you're always going to be a nurse. Someone said that to me at the very beginning of this, that you're a nurse. No one will take that away from you. You are a nurse, whether you're registered or not, you're still a nurse. And that was really important to me because I felt like something had been ripped out of me. But when I say find your alternative path, I mean that life goes on. In the space of me going through this process with the NMC, I've had a baby, I've lost a parent, and I have had another parent diagnosed with a terminal illness. Life continues, big things happen. And it's about being able to center yourself enough to be able to allow that to continue in your periphery, because it will do for however long, and you've got no control of it. You asked me before, Kim, is there a way of speeding it up? Let go of it. Let go of it and go through the motions, but find an alternative path that brings you joy. Don't hold on and hold out and think, I'll start to enjoy life once that's over. Because that's what I did. I kept thinking, well, I'll be all right when that's over. I'll be okay. I can do that when that's over. Thankfully, quite quickly, I realized, oh no, actually, I need to get on with my life and start to enjoy it again, because it passes you by. And what I would hate to happen is at the end of this process, I've been holding my breath and life's gone on past me. So it's about doing that. And, you know, if there's any way that people around you, or whether the Justice Foundation, you know, the peer-to-peer support group can enable people to do that, that's what to me is the most important.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you very much. Yeah, because otherwise we end up with another nurses take away their life because they couldn't see anything else that this prosecution. Kimberly, what do you think? I think that we are on the end now, but before closing, I will also ask Ishbel if you have anything to add, if you think that we missed to say something, or do you have any recommendation or advice to give? I would love to hear from you before we really close.
I think I'd just finally say, you know, you're not alone. Whether you're in fear of the process, going through it, at the end of it, out the other side. I mean, the trauma, that's when the trauma really kicks in, when people are out the other side. You know, you're not alone, and there is no shame. Even if you've done something, there's still no shame. We are human, we are fallible. And this fight isn't just for the innocent people, it's for the process that is inhumane. We're not sifting out people that have done nothing wrong, have whistleblown, and then they're being persecuted. This whole process that I'm going through is for everybody, because the whole system is inhumane. So please don't feel like you're alone, and feel like be able to talk about it, get in touch and communicate your story.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Patricia left another comment. Do you want to put that up, Dina, before we close today? I mean, I feel this conversation is so important, and we could talk about this for hours. I mean, honestly, because it is a tough conversation, and it's a conversation that a lot of people are sitting with. You know, what do I do? Who do I turn to? How do I bring this to light? How do I keep myself safe? I think so. Thank you again, Ishbel, for this topic today. And then Patricia says, Ben, thank you. I feel it to be not only my passion and purpose, but also a huge privilege, a duty and a responsibility to share my knowledge, wisdom, and experience with all nurses, but particularly the younger generation. Leaving a legacy is what tribal elders do. Thank you for all you share. You have a powerful voice, and I enjoyed your posts. Keep speaking up. And if you have not followed Ben yet, he has just been boom, 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 rapid firing posts out lately that are so incredibly profound and powerful. So I highly recommend.
From Nigeria, yes, because we need to speak up from all over the we speak up all over the world.
So I highly recommend following his posts. And then Cootie says, Ishbel, you absolutely true learning to live in the present moment is critical rather than waiting for a moment when all ducks are in the row. Absolutely. And you can't stop living. I totally agree with that you can't wait for something to get better or for something to happen, because then what are you left with? You're just left with that day-to-day living in that same trauma, living in that same darkness, that if you just, it's going to do what it's going to do, right? Things are going to happen. It's going to move along the pace that it moves. But it doesn't mean you have to stop living. It doesn't mean that you have to wait for that ending to come, or for that decision to come. And I know it's easier for me to say than done, but I feel like you went through so much outside of that experience, and having a new baby and to have that beautiful joy and that blessing and that life come into your life kind of changed probably your perspective and how you were seeing that at the time. Like, this is hopeless. This is never going to change, this process. And what do I do with myself, and how do I proceed? But you've taken that experience, you've taken that trauma yourself, and you're helping others. And that speaks volumes, because now other people can share their stories with you. You've created this organization and this foundation to bring others safely and into that same light, and to see there is so much opportunity. Nursing is such a beautiful, beautiful profession that just because one book closes doesn't mean that's the end. Write another book, open a new chapter, start a new chapter. That's why I wrote my book. I wrote, The Healthcare Mafia, co-authored with Ashley Scott. And it talks about things that happened during COVID, and a underlying tone of whistleblowing. And I too have all kinds of resources and whatnot at the end of the book, in regards to all over the US, globally, who to reach out, where your support is, the crises numbers, all of those different resources as well. And that just tells me that these conversations, this topic, is something that's never going to go away. This is something that we're all going to be talking about, different angles, different countries, across oceans. And it's these conversations that we just need to keep having. We just need to keep having.
And before I actually bring back Patricia comment, I would like to share Nicole, because she say I'm 18 months into the process.
Okay, so I am 18 months into the process after an incident in 2017. Thank you, Nicola, for being here. Thank you. It is completely inhumane. It is lonely and shameful. I am grateful that Ishbel has started this organization, and I am looking forward to reaching out to her. Right there is why we do what we do. Right there is why we have these conversations, because that's one voice that may have been sitting silent, that needed someone to talk to, and someone to share her story with, to not feel so alone, and maybe just even finding some guidance and a place to lay it down. So thank you again, Ishbel, for your joining us today and bringing your voice, your beauty, your presence. It just means more than you know. And I think Dina and I both can agree that this conversation will again happen. And I would love to again send another invite to you down the road to see where you are in the process, to see kind of where the foundation has gone, and if there's anything, and I'm just going to speak for myself, there's anything I can do to push this forward, to get you in the light. If there's anything that I can do to support you in any way, please do not hesitate to reach out, to ask. You can email me, you can call me, you can DM me, you can send me a note and a post or something. I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with Kimberly. Also, Patricia said, thank you for what you're doing. We work alongside and support you in getting justice for nurses who speak up. Bravo. And yes, as well. So if you want to continue this conversation again later on, when you think it's the right moment, please reach out.
Yeah.
And I think we can close with this. Great to turn that our painful experience to the contribution energy. Thank you, Curti.
Yes, thank you, Nicola, and thank you everyone that showed up today. Thank you everybody who was silently watching and listening. Again, I hope, and I know Dina and I, this is why we do what we do. This is why we have these conversations, to create safe places for people to talk and to have the conversations, even if you don't say anything and you're just listening. It's to have these conversations that, for whatever reason, somehow, some way, they change someone else's life. They've given someone else and I hate the word courage, but it is kind of that way. The courage to feel that they aren't by themselves. And okay, so now I have resources. Now I know who to go to. Now I know where to talk to someone. Now I know that I have a path. I have a blueprint. They've given me a map. Now I know how to navigate this, where I thought it was all by myself. Where I say it sometimes as, you feel sometimes like you're just dropped in the middle of an island. You're given no food, no water, no light, no map, and just meant to find your way. So I believe it's LinkedIn and this platform and this podcast with Dina that hopefully we've given people the food, the light, the map to find their way, and a big island of, oh my God, what do I do now? So thank you, Dina, always for these Sundays. I love my time with you, and I love the guests that we keep bringing forward in these conversations that we keep having. And I look forward to the next one. Absolutely. Whoop.
Sorry, I'm moved. I want to say thank you, and Ishabel, I hope you are happy about this podcast, and I hope you enjoy, and thank you very much for what you share with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating to this podcast. If you watch it from YouTube, please like, comment, and share. Subscribe to Nurses Move channel, and please share this content with people do you think they benefit from. Thank you very much. Have a lovely end of the day. Bye.
Bye, ladies. Have a wonderful Sunday. Thanks again, everybody, for coming.
Bye-bye.
Bye, honey.